When I first moved to a place that had a real winter, snow was something I absolutely hated. As soon as it was on the ground, most of my outdoor hobbies had to be put on hold. Then I got a fat bike and things quickly changed. Every fall, I now find myself looking forward to my first ride of the season on snow. Since that time, I've also learned some things about how to make these rides more enjoyable, and in this video, I'm going to share my top 3 tips for riding in the snow. Number 1, use flat pedals. I'm going to start with the controversial one, the age-old debate, flats or clips. Now, I'm normally on the other side of this argument and love my SPDs, but in the winter it's a different story. I found that in the snow, I'm having to hike a bike more often, and normal boots are more comfortable and easier to do that in. Riding flats also means there are no clogged and icy clips or pedals when I get back on my bike. You can only get so much off by knocking the side of your shoe into the pedal, and it can get really annoying on a long ride. It's also a way to save some money because you don't need a bike-specific pair of shoes. You can just use the winter boots you already have. Unlike the premium demanded by cycling-specific clothing, a good pair of normal winter boots are relatively inexpensive. Just make sure they're insulated and waterproof or you're not going to have a very fun time. Number 2, wear the right gear. Layer up, and that includes using a good base layer that will wick the sweat away from you. It can be tricky to predict how warm you really need to dress because wind, sunlight, and shade can all drastically change how it feels. It might be really cold out, but I've had rides below zero where I was glad I was able to take a layer off because I was starting to sweat from the amount of effort I was putting in. It's also worth it to invest in a good shell, that outer layer that looks kind of like a rain jacket. The shell blocks the wind, but it also has ventilation on your armpits and other areas to allow moisture to get out. Another thing that I already mentioned is to wear warm socks and boots. My feet are usually the first thing to get cold besides my fingers, and it is not fun, so make sure you pay special attention here. Your fingers and hands are even more vulnerable than your feet, and you can use gloves or bar mitts. I like bar mitts for mellower rides or when it's really bitterly cold, but most of the time I just use a good pair of snow gloves. My ears are probably the only other thing that really gets cold, so I've started to carry a fleece headband in my pocket. I like this better than a beanie or a hat because it keeps my ears warm while not getting me too sweaty. Number 3, pay attention to your tire pressure. I've talked about this in a lot of other videos, but tire pressure is really important with fat bikes. Even a half pound of air can be the difference between being tractionless and setting a PR on that twisty descent. If you find you're leaving ruts in a groomed or packed trail on a cold day, your pressure is probably too high, so drop it down a little. As soon as you do, not only will you leave the trail damage-free, but you'll probably find you're not spinning your back tire as much. On the other hand, if your sidewall is constantly giving out on you and things feel sluggish, then I'd add a little air and see if that gets things rolling faster. It's hard to give a good recommendation on what pressure to use because it's dependent on a ton of different factors, but 7 to 8 psi is probably the max you'd ever use on snow. So that's it, my top 3 tips for fat biking in the snow. If you have some tips you found really helpful, be sure to put them down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and share it. And finally, if you want to see more of my videos, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.